There we go. So can you guys still see, can you guys see my screen, my PowerPoint screen?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Great. Let's start. So here we go. Lesson number 2, which is starting the project. In PMBOK 6, PMI called it something like initiating, just for some of you. But now it is totally irrelevant. This is completely irrelevant now. So let's strike it off, right? But some of you who have read PMBOK 6, you might just want to think about it from that standpoint. Now, what happens when a project manager joins a project or project begins? There are 2 components to this chapter. Unfortunately, PMI, as I've been saying, authorized prep book that you are using to study does not do justice to the way the content should have been presented. So someone needs to go on mute also. I already put everyone on mute from my side, but someone decided to unmute themselves. So let's do this here. There we go. All right. So what happens is there are 2 sentiments to starting the project. First of all, what is this chapter all about? This chapter, if we had to summarize it, and I was talking to someone and he said, how about we call this chapter Mr. Pete Sampras stole balls quietly, posing as George Clooney. Now, what does that mean? Topic number A, topic number A right here, which is understand the methodology. So the first topic of this chapter is understand the methodology. Methodology means if you're joining a project, the first thing you should do is try to understand the business need, and along with the business need, understand, am I working on a predictive project, or sometimes called waterfall, or a traditional project? Waterfall or a traditional project. Traditional project means PMBOK 6 type of a project. Or am I working on an agile based project? You know, this is where now the new mindset of a project manager is. What am I working on? Am I working on a traditional project? Am I working on a waterfall project? Because, so the first sentiment of starting the project, if you are think of it like this, that you are a project manager and you join a project. When you join a project, what should you do? You know what you should do? The first thing, start reviewing historical documents to establish the business need. You know the business need. Now think about what approach. Imagine you have always worked all your life on traditional project and you joined the agile project, but you're thinking traditional. How are you going to execute this project? You are already starting with a flawed thinking. So PMI now is encouraging all the project managers to think practically, realistically, and do the right things. Do not bring a traditional approach on an agile project, and do not bring an agile approach on a traditional project. So in the beginning itself, understand the methodology. So topic number A for lesson number 2 is start with understanding the methodology, but don't just jump on the methodology. Before that, understand the business need. Always. If you join a project as a project manager, if I'm a project manager, first thing, let me review the business case. Let me review the project charter. Let me review this historical top level business documents to understand what is the need. What does my client really want? And once I know what my client really wants, then I should now, what methodology should we be using to execute this, right? Methodology, the first component. Now, this is the first sentiment of this chapter. There may be topic A and followed by many different topics that I will discuss very soon. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. 9 topics, topic A to topic I. There are 9 topics in this chapter. There may be 9 topics, but there are only 2 sentiments, guys. There are only 2 sentiments. So you have to hear this well. The first sentiment is understand the methodology. And the second sentiment is starting the project means what are you waiting for? Now you know the business need, you know what methodology you will apply, create a project management plan. So the 2 sentiments. Number 1 is when you're starting the project, establish the business need by reviewing the business document and establish the methodology. That's sentiment number 1. Then there is sentiment number 2. Develop the project management plan. So let's take a look at it. How does this chapter flow? So M, methodology. P, plan. Create the plan. S, define the scope. The second S right here. So again, one more time, M, methodology. P, create the plan. P right here, create the plan. S, scope, define the scope. Define now, elaborate the scope, not the high level. Go detail now, elaborate the scope. Then the other S right here, schedule. Go detail planning for schedule now. B, budget, define the budget, detail, not high level anymore. Detail budget and who the resources will be on the project. Understand that. Q, establish the right level of quality. Establish the right level of quality. That's Q. Then the P right here. Not all the work of this project will be executed by internal resources. Not all the work will be executed by internal resources. So what do you need to do? You need to maybe procure some resources from outside or procurement from outside for that work that cannot be performed with internal capabilities. Only that work, because there are some ethical questions here on the PMP exam that, hey, you are trying to get someone from your network. Absolutely incorrect. You cannot do that in project management. Only when you identify work that cannot be delivered with internal capabilities is when you acquire resources from outside, and that's what is called procuring, right? Engaging external vendors to perform some of the project work. Now, as does not mean anything, right? G, George, means governance. When you are in a project in planning stages, establish the right kind of governance. What is in your authority and when do you need to escalate? What is in your resources authority and when do they need to escalate to you? So there are 2 escalation points on projects that you need to know. One escalation point is your resources working on the project cannot continue to resolve problems on their own all the time, as much as you must encourage it. As much as we must encourage it and value servant leadership. Encourage it that they should resolve and they should make decisions. But there will be instances when in projects they will not be able to do it on their own, right? They cannot do it on their own. This has gone beyond their bestowed authority. So what do? They must escalate to you. But there will also be times when you and your resources will not be able to resolve certain things because it will require engagement of higher authorities or the sponsoring organization. So you also have an escalation path, and that's what is called governance. Governance is putting systems and methods in place. So what if someone said, what is governance for you? I would say governance is putting systems and methods in place to ensure that the project continues to deliver the benefits for which it has been undertaken. That's what governance does. Governance does not care about your, small little things, issues that happens in the project. When things reach that escalation point, they only reach there because it is identified that your project is not doing what it is supposed to do, and leadership comes into play, right? You will never see leadership come into a project or sit in a meeting during execution. A vice president did not come and sit into an execution meeting with a team because they trust the project manager is doing the right things. If the leadership has suddenly started showing up in one of your meetings during execution, that means some problem is there. They're not trusting the process, right? So governance. And finally, C, George Clooney, C means put together the closing procedures. So all this work is about planning, right? So look, two sentiments. The first sentiment is the methodology sentiment. And you know what the second sentiment is? Second sentiment is the planning sentiment or the project management plan. Create the project management plan. So what is starting the project? Starting the project is right here, is understand the business need and understand the methodology. Number one. And number two, once you know now what is the business need and what methodology you are using on the project, accordingly create the plan. That is the sentiment of the project. Now, so there are two topics. Where do these other topics, scope, schedule, budget, resources, quality, procurement, governance, and closing go? Where do they go? They go nowhere but to create a project. Now listen to this carefully. After this, I'm going to open this up for 5 minutes of Q&A. I want to make sure that everyone understands this, right? So two sentiments. Number one sentiment is right here. Understand the methodology and the business needs. The second sentiment is right here. Develop the project management plan. So there are 9 topics listed as starting the project. Well, these are 2 topics. What happens to the 9 other topics? This is what happens. To create the project management plan right here, to create the project management plan, you will have to first understand the scope. Then you will have to put the schedule into the plan. Then you will have to put the budget into the plan. Then you will have to put the resources into the plan. Then you have to put the quality into the plan, procurement into the plan, governance into the plan, and closing procedures into the plan. All these other components, the 7 other components or 7 other topics, are integrated into one topic called develop project management plan. So if you ever went for an to understand this, this is how you understand it. Someone said, hey, what do you do during planning? Your answer will be, during planning, I create a project management plan. And they said, how do you create a project management plan? To create a project management plan, my first step is to define the scope in detailed manner. Then my second step is understand how long would it take to deliver this scope. Put this in my project management plan. My third step is how much would it cost to deliver this scope in this time with this cost. My fourth step is what resources will perform the work. It should be part of my project management plan. My fifth step in creating a project management plan is what level of quality do I need to achieve for this project? If I increase the quality, the project cost will go high. If I keep it at a minimum standard, maybe I will balance the cost. Do I need procurement on the project? Number 6 sentiment. Do I need procurement of the project? Include that. What will be done by procurement staff? Then what will be my governance structure? Followed by the last, how am I going to close the project when I get to closing? What are the things that I will? So project management plan contains those 7 other topics, right? So there are 2 sentiments, methodology and project plan. The other 7 topics are part of project management plan. This is very important to understand. And I can tell you this right now, just this 10 minutes discourse that I gave you, 99% of the people who are sitting out there and reading this book have no clue to what's written here. They have no clue. They're just reading it in a sequential fashion without understanding what's going on here. What is PMI or any organization trying to convey? Organizations are trying to convey a smart little message to us. They're saying, you are a project manager. What are you sitting joining the project? Start the work as quickly as possible. And when you start the work, we want you to understand our methodology first, based on the business need. Advocate the right methodology, adaptive or traditional, then or agile or waterfall, whatever you want to call it. Then now you know the methodology. Use this methodology to create a plan. If it is an agile methodology, create an agile plan. If it is a waterfall methodology, create that robust, heavy plan. And that plan should contain at a bare minimum. So the plan, now listen to this carefully. The plan should contain at a bare minimum scope. Look at this here, schedule, budget or cost, resources, quality, procurement, governance, and procedures for closing. For me, plan is nothing but a checklist of items that have to be performed for in execution. So in execution, what happens in execution? I take the plan, I say, week 1, this is what is listed in my plan, and this is what I want to achieve. Week 2, this is what I want to achieve. And what is listed? Scope, in this time, in this cost, with these resources, with this level of quality, with quality, with certain items that will be procured from outside, governance and closing procedures. So very quickly, for 5 minutes till 8, I will give you an opportunity to ask me some questions just from what I just discussed. Any questions from here?
This is Gilles. You will guess my question. What happening to the project communication and stakeholder plan from PMBOK 6?
Mm-hmm. Sorry?
You will get, I'm surprised that you did not address that, but what happening to the project communication and the project stakeholder plan?
Absolutely. So it is a component. We will talk about that component when we get there. It's topic number F of this book, right?
Okay.
It is there. Those 10 plans are still there, but I'm just trying to give an overview of the sentiment of the chapter right now, right? But as part of topic F, which is called development of project management plan, which I'm showing as topic B for us here, it is there, those 10 plans in there, 4 baselines in there, 3 other plans in there. They've added one more plan now. It's not just 2 other plans and 2 others. So it's exactly the way that component F is exactly the way how, so component F or topic F of this chapter is the way how you saw planning in your PMBOK 6. That's where you will use your knowledge just for topic F. Okay. Good. Jill, did I answer your question?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it is there, but it's not as relevant as before now. Okay. All right. Awesome. So there we go. So this is the sentiment. If you have understood it well, you can get about 3 to 5 questions right on PMP exam just with this basic knowledge. Right now, let us take a look at the topics and how they have been built in the PMBOK guide. Let's take a look at that a little bit. Lesson number two, we said Mr. Pete Sampras stole balls quietly, posing at George Clooney. A great mnemonic to learn the 9 topics. Actually, I didn't create it. Rachel created it for you guys. I mean, I don't have time, so but she was kind enough to think about something that we all will remember. Just like our previous topic lesson number 1. Bunny rabbits do not eat TVs. Right? Very easy to remember. Now you know. You can map very quickly the topic. You don't have to use that additional component of our brain just to memorize things. There you go. There's a simple, easy mnemonic. Now let me present to you how PMI has presented this chapter one time, and then we will jump into very quickly all the topics at a high level from PMP exam standpoint. And this will give you a great view for people who are planning to write the sprint exam and people who will be attending the second PMP session. So both of you will have a great overview from PMP exam standpoint. It will give you a kind of like idea of leaning into future a little bit, jumping into the guide with a good momentum behind you, right? So that's the idea of this session. All right, there we go. So let's start and move here to the next slide. Now let's see how topic number 2 has been defined in PMI. It's not relevant from exam standpoint, but it's very important to see how PMI defines it. So there you go. Again, starting the project, or starting, they say starting the work. Lesson 2. Topic A, determine methodology. Then they talk about topic B, which is define and manage scope. Then the guide speaks about topic number C, which talks about define or determine the budget and resources. This is where PMI starts making a mistake. Then they go and they talk about topic number D, and they say define and manage schedule. Then they talk about topic number E, and they talk about define and manage schedule. After schedule, it will be quality. Define quality. Then starts topic number F. So there we go. This is your sentiment number 1 of this chapter. And topic number F, integrate all planning processes. This is your sentiment number 2. PMI just likes to use complex words, but this means create your project management plan. Create the project management plan. So there are only 2 topics here. One is topic F, one is topic A and topic F. Continue moving. Then it is topic number E, F, G, then topic H, and then topic I. Topic G, good thing is, so G is procurement. Understand if you need procurement for the project. H is define the governance for your project. And plan and manage closure is your last topic, right? So this is how PMI presented it. How did we present it now? We said we'll start with Mr. George or Mr. Pete. So plan. So topic number F for us is the topic F. When we read it, how do we read it? We read it 1, topic number 1, topic number 2. This is how we want to read it. Followed by 3, followed by schedule, followed by budget and resources, then quality, then, and then. This is how you read it. Now, the important thing here is topic number F right here, this topic is the topic where all this topic number 3 is into this, topic number C is here, topic number D is here, topic number E is here, topic number G, H, and I, all these topics B, C, D, E, G, H, I are components of topic number F, are components of topic number F. Now, let's look at this visual to understand it. Starting the work. Starting the work has two components, methodology and project. Create the project plan. To create a project plan, you will have to build scope in it. You will have to build schedule in it. You will have to build cost, resources, quality, followed by, just continue here, quality, followed by quality, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Quality, followed by procurement, followed by governance, and closing procedures. So there we go. This is how you see this chapter, sentiment number 1 and sentiment number 2. Did everyone understand how it is? Topic A, topic F. All other topics are within topic F, right? We will take a deeper dive into this with the session. Others know about it, but with others in the class, in the session 2, this is where we are going to spend some time understanding this a little bit more. But it's very important to understand the underlying principle and philosophy of PMI and organizations. PMI is only responding to the change that's taking place around the world right now, right? They're responding to the change that's taking place around the world. And they want to make sure that the standard is relevant to the community, right? What is the point of that PMBOK 6 guide if it is not relevant to organization, or PMBOK 5 or PMBOK 11 if it gets created? The idea of project management has to be relevant to the project management community. And if it is the reason why they have established the guide they have established now is because they want to keep it as relevant as possible, right? So let's talk about topic number A, and you will find about 10 to 15 questions on the exam from here. Topic number A, very, very, very important for you to understand the methodology component. And that is why we spend so much time on learning about predictive. When we took a subject, as Rachel was our subject in that video that we created for 2 hours and 40 minutes, and then we created another subject for adaptive, and we learned about what is predictive, what is adaptive. The idea of having that session so early was to give you a mindset that, guys, PMBOK guide is not about the classic traditional approach anymore. Half of the PMBOK guide is about agile. So you read any topic, you have to think about that topic from agile standpoint, and you also have to think about that topic from predictive standpoint. There are two parts to that. PMI does not do a good job at separating the two, because then the guide will become humongous. But what they do is they say, keep the mindset, keep the mindset. That's why they said methodology. Now create a plan based on the methodology. If you are in a traditional approach, your plan would be very heavy, big, large, and may take 3 months for a $2 million project. But if you're on an agile-based project, it will be on demand. Small components, small planning, sprints. Every sprint will have a component of planning, right? Because we do not know much about the project. Whatever we know, we plan. But in traditional, we visualize the entire product, the condominium building. The planning for a 40-floor condominium building, you can think, you cannot do one floor at a time. You make the big design ready. Even before selling, if you go to a condominium office and they have their release 1 or release 2, you see it, look at the model, they already know which what are the dimensions of that? Design is ready. The plan is ready, right? And that has taken them for that, just for that office to open, that real estate office to open for starting to enroll clients. They've already created the plan they have submitted the plan. They are ready to dig the foundation when people have enrolled into that condominium building. They've got like, oh, a booking amount has come, right? So predictive approach. In agile or knowledge-based project, it's not the same. It's a little different. We do not have much information. Whatever information we have, based on that, we do planning. So methodology. What is methodology here? Two methodologies that we have learned about. Said the traditional approach methodology. As a project manager, the first thing is when you start the project, and determine the methodology. Should we use predictive, sometimes called waterfall, or mostly called waterfall, or sequential approach, also called the plan-driven approach, plan-heavy approach, and predictive, waterfall, sequential, plan-driven, and sometimes also called sequential, predictive, waterfall, traditional approach, as PMI likes to call it, traditional approach to development, right? Then there is this other methodology which is called adaptive or agile, with different flavors of agile that your project could be using. You could be using Scrum, you could be using Kanban, you could be using extreme programming method of development, all IT based, right? So some components of agile. So depending on what methodology you choose, agile or adaptive, your topic number H will start, and your planning will focus on either this way of planning or agile way of planning, right? So methodology. And now when you look at predictive, your plans are extremely detailed and heavy. When you look at agile, your plans are lightweight, just for next 2 to 3 months of work, right? This is what you need to understand from exam standpoint from this slide. And there'll be quite a few questions on the planning component of agile and how does a plan look like in traditional. And this is where quite a lot of information will be you will be tested on quite a lot of information, something that we'll cover in next slide right now. So first thing, so that is why going on.
So is this topic H or topic F?
This is topic A right now. Topic A, methodology.
No. So below you've written topic
Yeah,
H.
it's topic H. Topic H. Right. So all of us, we need to review that video that we have on our website. If you have still not done that, because this book is not going to make sense to you if you do not know what agile method approach is and what predictive is, because every topic of every chapter looks at, if you are an agile project, what methodology to use, and if you're a waterfall based project, what methodology to use. Now in the exam there will be questions about why did you decide to choose predictive approach and why did you decide to use agile approach. So why use a certain approach is what we'll discuss in our next slide. Determine. So topic A, in the exam there are 2 questions or 3 questions on what led you to recommend agile approach of development or waterfall approach of development. What led you to recommend this? Primary reason for such recommendation are, so let's say, why choose waterfall and why choose agile? The first part is risk. If the risk is high, If the risk is extremely high, right? Risk of failure is extremely high, choose agile. If the risk of failure is extremely high, choose agile. If there is a lot of unknown on the project, scope is not well defined, scope is or is a lot of unknown, or scope is loosey-goosey, scope is not well defined, choose agile. So in the exam, what are you seeing? You're seeing a scenario. In the scenario, the project you are a project manager, and at this time you're working with your sponsor and you're discussing with your sponsor. And you're discussing with the sponsor, and sponsor wants to know, why should we use agile right now? But the sponsor has told you that they just do not know what the scope is. They know about 2 requirements and they are not aware of anything else, but they want to immediately start development. What approach would you choose? Agile. Very simple. Then I said, the scope is really well defined. This is an industrial project. You need to create the entire project, or at least most of the functionalities of this project, for this project to be consumed. Imagine create a railway line and creating 100 meters of railway line without station. How is it going to work? Not going to work, right? So if you're working on an industrial project, service oriented project like that, you cannot go agile. Sometimes you cannot go agile. You have to go waterfall or iterative waterfall, right? So scope is well defined. Most of the product will be required. Most of the product will be required for this project to deliver value. What project should be? What approach? Predictive. So such questions, about 2 to 5 such questions you would see on the exam, and you should know, right? So risk very high, risk of failure is very high. What do we choose? Agile. Scope is loosey-goosey, scope is not well defined. What do we choose? Agile. Knowledge-based project, what do we use? Agile. Industrial project, waterfall. Very, very important. Industrial project, service-oriented project. When the sponsors want the entire scope to be ready, or most of the scope to be delivered, and without most of the scope delivered, this project may not deliver the required value. Waterfall. Complexity. The project is extremely complex and requirements must be collected beforehand. For example, launching a satellite into moon. Waterfall. So keep that in mind. IT-based, knowledge-based projects are, IT-based, knowledge-based projects are best executed using agile. Iterative approaches. Agile, iterative approaches. Keep it in mind. All right. So the exam questions will revolve around this. And this is what topic 8 talks about in the book. If you heard me well and start flipping through the pages tonight itself, you will see, yeah, of course, this is what it is. Methodology, complexity, risk, right? Unforeseen, unknown reasons. Those are the reasons that are leading you to decide a certain methodology. So as a project manager, you may have to play an active role in recommendation or determination of a certain methodology. That's why it's called determine the methodology. Now, sponsors are like, all right, we had a great discussion, right? We had a great discussion. Now what? The question, now what? You know the methodology, now what? Now use the methodology, start planning the project. Topic number F. Our next topic is topic number F. Create the project management plan. And not go define the scope, not go define the schedule. Create the plan, start creating the plan, and the first component of this plan will be the schedule. Oh, sorry, scope will be the scope. You know, when someone says, execute a project for me, you know what I say the first thing? All right, let me work with your stakeholders and understand what your requirements are. Scope, work. Without work, how would I tell you how long would it take and how much would it cost? If my sponsor comes to me and say, well, Hemant, how much would it cost to execute this project? I say, give me 2 months. It's an industrial project. I need to send my business analyst to start collecting the requirements. Only when they have collected the requirements, and now I have worked with my teams to understand the schedule, and then I'll tell you the cost. Without that, I can't tell you the cost. Industrial. Agile project, I can say, tomorrow, don't worry about it. You have 2 requirements. I'll sit with my team and I evaluate it for you right now, and I create a high-level roadmap. I'll give it to you tomorrow. Agile, right? Agile, robust, very quick way. but it is quick because the scope is just this much, right? So what is good and what is bad is not the question anymore in the world. The question is, what is the right thing to do? IT project, best way to execute, agile. Waterfall projects, industrial project, service-oriented project, waterfall, right? Okay. So that's your methodology. Now, second topic, or topic number F, starts now after topic number A, which is develop the project management plan. Now, this is important. Take note of this because 3 to 5 PMP questions will be from this discussion, right? So take some good notes here. Develop, PMI says, integrate project processes, topic number F. So next topic, again, so why that mnemonic has been created the way it has been created is to help you put in perspective the processes, or in other words, by the way, if you don't know who Pete Sampras is, he was a great tennis player during when I was growing up, right? One of the greatest players during that time, not anymore. There are other players who have taken him over. Mr. Pete Sampras. So methodology. Mr. Pete Sampras stole balls quietly, posing as George, and you all know who George Clooney is, right? No, I don't have to tell you who George Clooney is. If you don't know George Clooney, then a famous actor, actually, if you didn't know. Methodology, and now right here, so plan. PMI says integrate the processes. We say create the project management plan, and this is topic number F. This is topic A, this is topic number F. So when you read this chapter, you have to read A first, followed by F. I don't know why PMI decided to do it like this, but if you read the guide, just the first paragraph of lesson 2, just the first paragraph will say, understand the methodology, create the plan. These are the two things you got to do as part of starting the project. Nothing but this. Understand the methodology. Once you know what the methodology is, execute the plan. Okay? All right. So project management plan. Now, this is where our friend Reel's question gets answered. Project management plan. You know, apart from it, project management plan contains all this, this, P, G, and Q. There's much more to project management plan. And there is a mathematical kind of like, how do we call it? Equation. It looks like a mathematical equation to understand it, right? This is how it looks like. It says 10 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2. Project management plan contains 10 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2. So what is 10? You know what is foundation of project management? Foundation of project management is 10. What is PMBOK 6 guide? It is 10. The foundation. And what is that foundation of any project in the world? These are 10 core knowledge areas of project management. If you work in a project, you got to think about these 10 things at a bare minimum. There are many other things you think about, but at least to avoid the risk, avoid omissions, avoid holes in your plan, you must address these 10 components. So the first component, so this is where the section number F speaks about only what I'm going to discuss right now. Topic F talks about this. 10, 4, 3, 2. What is 10? 10 is the 10 knowledge area or 10 foundations of project management. 10 foundational steps that you must take to execute a project or create a project management plan. Now, what are those 10 foundational steps? You know, when you join a project, what's the first thing you do? As I said, and some of you are nodding your head, it is understand the scope. Understand the scope. Or in other words, PMI's world, they call it create a scope management plan. There is no such thing like scope management plan. There is only project management plan. This is PMI's word, right? Scope. Then they say scope could be, look at this. What is scope? The sponsor said the scope is, I want to build the mobile application. Scope. I have a desktop application. I want to build a mobile application. Okay, that's the scope. We want to build a mobile application, but just mobile application is nothing. The second step is, what would this mobile application contain? Now the sponsor, now you asked this question, what would your mobile application contain? They said it will have a home page requirement. It will have a about us page requirement. It will have a contact us page, third requirement. It will have product number 1, which is selling pencils. Then product number 2, erasers. Product number 3, other items, stationary items required for the kids. Then product. We'll be selling all these product online. So scope followed by a requirement management plan or requirements. Second foundational step, understand what the scope is. So why understand the scope? Now, when you know I have to work on the mobile application, you will not work on departmental store. If a stakeholder said, oh, by the way, in the department store, we would also like to create a shelf, you will tell them the scope of the project is mobile application. And you will only collect the requirements that are relevant to mobile application. That is why some of the project managers are guilty of doing this, creating a laundry list of requirements, and sometimes they are not relevant to our scope. They have collected the requirements from our stakeholders, but those requirements are just not relevant at all, right? So second part or second foundation is your requirements. Now, this scope and requirements, 1, 2, number 3, in what time? Schedule management plan. Right? Now look at this. This scope and these requirements in this time. Now, how much would it cost? It's logical. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, cost management plan. Now, I've been talking about it on session 1 and session 2 and all our PMP courses. I always talk about it. I say, you created a product as desired and wanted by the client. You gave them, they said, give me home page, contact us page, and product page, and I'll be happy. And you gave it to them, and they're still not happy. Why? Because you did not deliver the expected level of quality. So do not deliver a product. It's the fourth important constraint of a project. So look, scope, schedule, and cost are called the triple constraints of the project. These are 3 major constraints of the project. But what is the point of delivering scope, schedule, and cost? You gave the as a builder, home builder, you gave your client or the owner of the house exactly what they were looking for. But when with all the specifications they wanted, when they entered the house, the door creaked. Then they tried to switch on the stove didn't work. Outside it's 37 degrees and the AC is not working right now. But the AC is installed. You wanted it, right? Then your ducts are on the floor visible. They should have been hidden. You gave them exact what they wanted, but you did not meet the level of quality. And hence, the fifth part is ensure that you are building the right level of quality. Look at this statement. Right level of quality. Sorry, you're building the move that slides move. You're building the right level of quality, because if you will try to provide higher level of quality than desired or the project, because every time you increase the quality, the cost of the project also goes up. And if you increase the quality of the product so high that the customer cannot buy it, what's the point, right? How do you get a BMW for $43,000 and you get a Tesla 100D or P100D for 150, 160,000? What's the difference? What is the reason? It is the level of quality that has been extended in the product. It has become so high now. You continue to add this component. The cost of the car just continues to go up, and that's what happens with luxury. What is like Honda and BMW? They do the same thing. But why Honda is 23? Why BMW starts at 43 or 41 or whatever that price is? I don't know. So there we go. Right? The reason is the level of quality we are forming, we're increasing. But if we try to increase the quality to the level where consumption cannot happen, what's the point? So you have to measure both cost and benefit of quality. What is the right level of quality? Number 5, quality. Number 6, this scope, in this time, in this cost, with this level of quality, who will perform the work? Right? You need people to perform the work. People will perform the work. Now, this scope, this time, this cost, this level of quality, these people will perform the work. They will communicate. So make sure that you put communication. So resource management plan, communication management plan. Make sure that you put the right level of communication in place, right? So imagine I am working on a small project with 5 people. I don't need to write a communication management plan. But imagine now you're working on a city project. You're working for, let's say, AIRP, the engineering firm, and you're working on Finch LRT right now. And now your communication plan, because you're working with 2,000 people, you're working with the city, you're communicating with the city, your plan has to be extremely robust. Your plan has to be heavy, right? Communication planning becomes very, very important on government project and starts on day 1, because now you're even communicating with the citizens. So communication management. Now, this scope, in this time, this cost, with this level of quality, these people will perform the work. This is the level of communication that is required on the project. What is the level of risk? Risk management plan. The next plan, the risk management plan. Now, this scope, in this time, with this cost, this level of quality, these people will perform the work. People talk, so if the team size is large, increase the rigor of communication. If the team is small, don't spend 20 days building a communication plan, just keep it very simple, right? The rigor of communication varies based on the kind of project you're working on. Then ensure that you're measuring the risk of the project, documenting the risks and developing responses. Not only that, so this is your 8, not all work right here, the work that you said right here, not all work can be performed by internal capabilities. There will be times when you will need to acquire people from outside, and procurement management plan. The next topic, procurement management plan, and finally, your internal and external stakeholders and stakeholder management plan. So project management plan contains 10 subsidiary plans, starting from scope to stakeholder. Make no mistake, this is bare minimum. There is much more to plan than this. But at a bare minimum, this is called the foundation of project management. In PMBOK 6, they had 10 chapters. And those 10 chapters were from scope to stakeholders in the order I described to you. So there were these 10 chapters, and they were topped up with 3 other chapters, and those were called the introduction chapters. 3 chapters from 4th to 13th, they started with scope and ended up with stakeholders. That's your PMBOK 6 right here. So I just drove you through PMBOK 6 to 13 chapters, right? So project plan contains these 10 subsidiary plans, and PMI has decided to still keep them because this is foundation to project management. Then it contains four baselines. There you go. This is important. It contains 4 baselines. What is baseline? So project management plan, when sponsors sign off, when the sponsor says, I'm signing off on this, when they sign off on the project plan, when do they sign off on project plan? They sign off on project plan when scope is signed off, schedule is signed off, cost is signed off. These are called 3 baselines. Scope baseline, schedule baseline, cost baseline. Stakeholders have signed off on that. This means the plan is solid. But so there are only actually 3 baselines. There is nothing like, there is no idea of the 4th baseline. But What happens is some organizations, for example, Deloitte actually, they love the idea of not having scope, schedule, and cost baseline. They like it integrated together. And they put it as one. They'll say performance baseline. They'll say, I'll measure scope, schedule, and cost together using performance. So the fourth baseline is called the performance baseline, which is nothing but integrated scope, schedule, and cost baseline. Integrated scope, schedule, and cost baseline. So project management plan contains 10 subsidiary plans, 4 baselines, and next part is even more interesting. It contains 3 other plans. So it contains 10 plans from scope to stakeholder, 4 baselines, actually 3 baseline, we can say 3 plus 1. 3 scope, schedule, cost. Sometimes we integrate them and we call it performance baseline. It contains 3 others. This is called 3 others. What 3 others? What happens if a change comes into the project? How am I going to manage it? It contains change management plan. It contains another plan. Now, have you ever updated your computer and a new Windows or Apple's iOS update came on your Mac machine or on your Windows Microsoft laptop? Microsoft update came, you updated, but what happens is your operating system starts shaking a little bit and it says, do you want to go back to your previous configuration? Right? Computer documents everything that's happening in your computer. It keeps a log. Similarly, when you create a system, right? Look, phase 1, you created a system. Now you added some more in phase 2. Then you added some more in phase 3, phase 4, phase 5. You continue to add to your system. And that record of these changes is being managed and monitored as part of the project. And it is managed and monitored as part of configuration management plan. That's your second other plan. Third plan is called the compliance plan. And compliance plan exists only if your project is a regulatory project. You also keep a compliance plan that I am remaining compliant. Or if you work in a highly regulated industry, you will have another plan. You'll say my project needs to remain compliant with audit all the time, right? Compliance plan. And it contains 2 other. They're very simple. 2 other means are you using, what methodology are you using? Agile or Waterfall? Mention it in your plan because your plan will be developed accordingly. And the second one is methodology. And the second component here is methodology plus project life cycle. Project life cycle. How am I going to execute my project? Is it the entire product being developed in one phase, or there are multiple phases, or how am I developing my product? So project life cycle and methodology being 2 other components. So this is how it is. Project management plan contains 10
Excuse me.
Just hold on, please. 10 subsidiary plans. It contains 4 baselines. It contains 3 other plans, and it contains 2 other. So 10 subsidiary plans, 4 baselines, 3 other plans called change management plan to manage changes if there are changes that takes place after the plan has been signed off. If there are changes after the plan, how am I going to handle the changes? It contains configuration management plan. For any changes that are being brought to the product, a record is being created. Right? So if the new release fails, we can go back to the previous release. We can go back to the previous working configuration management. Record of all the changes that are taking place to your product. Very, very important. Every project. You know, Apple, every time your Apple upgrades, there's a log that's created. Apple phone upgrades, there's a log that's created. This was the last iOS. Do you want to go back to the previous iOS upgrade if your phone fails? It automatically takes you to the previous upgrade, right? And then it contains 2 more, two others, which is called the methodology and the project lifecycle. How are you delivering the product? Is it being delivered in one phase, multiple phases, kind of a release plan or something, right? So this is your topic number F. You know how many questions are there from what we just deliberated here, what I just conveyed to you? There are at least 7 to 8 questions from this topic. Just knowledge of this. And this is what is listed in the whole topic number F. Those 10 pages that they have created is to speak about this. Right? So this is where your PMBOK 6 comes into play, topic number F. Does that answer your question now, that the communication that you had? And Kader, you had a question, right? It was you, right?
Yeah, it was me. I just want you to repeat the 3. What does it mean?
Yeah, so change management plan, configuration management plan, and compliance management plan. 3 other plans. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, all right, good. So topic number F, I will give you an opportunity to ask me some relevant questions from only what we discussed, topic number F. We'll open it up for 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to other critical topics from exam standpoint. I'll talk about a little bit about scope, a little about schedule, what are the things that we need to be careful about, quality, and I will talk about maybe one more topic if we have time, then we will wrap up this session. All right, any questions?
So Hemant, Pawan this side. So
Yeah.
is stakeholder engagement plan part of communication plan or stakeholder management plan?
Stakeholder engagement plan is a stakeholder, sorry, it is called, you could call it a stakeholder engagement plan, Pawan, or stakeholder management plan, whatever works for you. But to create a communication management plan, you need the stakeholder identification at least at a minimum. Otherwise, look, communication plan. How would you create a communication plan if you do not know your stakeholders, right? So to create a communication plan, you may need at least at a bare minimum a list of stakeholders. And if you have the engagement plan ready, even better. Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Hi, Hemant. It's Hussein here. Very quick question. You mentioned before the only time we need to submit a change request to CCB whenever any of the baseline, the 3 baselines you mentioned are being changed. There is a question of if we change the communication management plan, which not impacting my baseline, the cost, scope, and schedule, do we still need to submit a change request, or we need to just engage the stakeholder at that point?
Sorry, one more time, Hajin. I think this was the email that you sent, and I was waiting for this question from you today, right? You have to send an email, right?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Yeah, please. I wanted to actually, you were in my mind, so I wanted to address that. But go ahead, please. Can you ask me one more time? I got busy with one of the texts that I needed to send. Sorry.
No problem. So what I'm saying here is that, as you mentioned, the 3 baselines you just mentioned, the scope, schedule, and cost, those 3, if you need to make any changes, you have to submit a change request to get
Absolutely.
CCB approval. However, if other 10 subsidiaries include the communication management plan, right? So if you need to make a change in your communication, which is not impacting your baseline, do we still need to submit a change request at that point?
So, some of the questions are very confusing in our exam. They have been put for a certain reason. Even if you get it wrong, don't worry about it. As I said before, what I want you to know is that in the exam, the only time you get tested for change control board. So it was a good question that you asked. So let me just put it 3 questions in front of you that you will see on the exam. One would be, whenever someone submits a change request, what is the first step? Impact assessment. That's your exam question. They want to test you on a fundamental, not, logically, if you think, if I have to make a change to a stakeholder plan and it does not impact anything, why would I submit a change request? Logically, right? Now look, then the first is perform impact. This is the exam. Second is change control.
Sorry. Somebody needs to go on mute, please.
Let's see who.
It's better now.
There we go. I got it. All right, that's great. So now the second part is change control board has approved a change request. Now listen to this very carefully. Change control board approved a change request. Hajin. Now, if the team is not with you, this change request is not going to fly too. You have to ensure that your team is with you when the change request comes from change control board also. So the second type of question that you will see in the exam, change control board has approved the request. What should you do? You should engage the customer sponsor, bring them in the meeting and let them talk to the team and tell them why this change is important. So the team is on site, because in the end, the work will be done by the team, right? Then the question, the third variation of the question will be, you just did impact assessment and you found out that there will be changes. What should you do? Submit it to change control board, and if change control board approves it, update the project management plan. If everything is team is with you, everyone is with you, update the change project management plan and tell the team about the new work. That's the third. Apart from that, changes to stakeholder management plan, changes to communication management plan, changes to any other plan except for scope, schedule, and cost mostly does not lead to a change request. Mostly, right? In the exam, you won't find one sentiment from this. You won't find one sentiment from this idea. Does that make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Hemant. This is Olu. I just want to ask about the compliance. I didn't get what you said about just like the compliance management plan. So I didn't really get what you were saying. I just had some.
So compliance management plan is a plan. We put it in place, especially on regulatory project. Not every project you will have a compliance plan. But what PMI is trying to suggest to us is that keep your project work compliant with organizational policies and procedures. For example, if I'm working on a project and if it requires me to have the project management plan signed off before I can execute the project, that step must take place. For example, if an issue has been identified, it should be logged into the issue log. Remain compliant with the processes and policies, and some procedures about issue resolution, escalation, audit, and all those things are put in compliance. Usually, if you're working in regulated industries, compliance management plan is a very important component of project management plan, right? In the exam, because this is a new topic, net new topic, it was never there before with PMI, there could be a question. Do I know based on my conversation with people if there was a question on compliance management? None that I talked or I heard from people, right? So do you really need to, I would not read too much into it. I'll give it a very shallow read. Topic number, I think it is GH, topic number H. GH, A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, I, G, H. Topic F, H. Topic H is something that you can keep it very shallow. Governance or compliance, whatever, compliance. H, compliance management plan. Keep it very shallow. Governance and compliance, because it's not very important from exam standpoint. Now, this was your planning, topic number F. Now, let's move to the next topic, which is scope. Very extremely important. It is so important from exam standpoint that people feel that scope, what is there in it?
Hemant, can I ask a question? I had raised my hand. I just wanted to ask a question that can maybe lead into this topic. If you could differentiate or give a little bit more context behind how the requirement plan fits into the scope management plan, the 1 and 2 on slide 6.
Absolutely. So give me some time here. I'm just jumping into scope right now, and this is where we'll discuss that, right? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. We're going to talk about it now. So topic number B of this chapter. So we start with topic A, and then we go to topic H. Now we come to create the project management plan. So this is topic H is project management. To create the project management plan, the first step is you should define the scope. How do we define the scope, right? What are the steps involved in defining the scope? So topic number B, define scope. The steps involved is, the first step is plan scope management. Plan scope management to create the high-level scope management plan and a requirement management plan. What is a scope management plan? So what is a scope management plan? And then we'll talk about what is a requirement management plan. Scope management plan is a guiding document. It's a guiding document, right? Project manager is creating it during planning. It is there's nothing like a scope management plan in real world, to be very honest. It is a project management plan. It's part of the project management plan. And in project management plan, we are writing a little bit about scope. You're saying scope management plan is a guiding document. What does it do? Guiding document, so what will it do? It will provide guidance. Guidance on what? Guidance on how scope will be planned, how it will be delivered in execution, how it will be delivered, and how, and most importantly, how changes to scope after the scope has been baselined or signed off, will be, how changes to scope will be managed. So once the stakeholders have signed off on the scope, what will be the process of managing change? Change request, change control board, or what are those steps that we'll take once stakeholders say, this, we agree on this scope, and in execution suddenly say, oh, I forgot, I have one more requirement. How are we going to handle that situation? That's what it means. That's your scope management plan. Now, what is a requirement management plan? Requirement management plan goes like this. Requirement management plan, first of all, is created by a business analyst. They create the requirement management plan. Now, what is a requirement management plan? Requirement management plan is a plan. Now look, requirements. We collect the requirements from our stakeholders. We work with our stakeholders and we get them implemented into the solution at the end. At the end of the project, what happens? Requirements become part of the solution. So requirement management plan is part of the scope management plan, and requirement management plan speaks about the entire life cycle of requirement from origination of requirement. So let's write it down. So what is the requirement management plan? Requirement management plan is a document that provides the life cycle of, or defines, it provides or defines or illustrates the life cycle, illustrates or defines the life cycle of the requirements from their origination, the day stakeholders spit them out, origination to the final implementation into the solution. Now, requirement management plan provides or defines the life cycle of the requirements from their origination, the day stakeholders provide the requirement, to their final implementation. Now, what does that mean? Right? It's pretty complex to understand it like this. What does that mean? So requirement management plan provides an overview of what happens to a requirement. So this is what happens when the project starts. Stakeholders, they provide the requirements. Stakeholders, what do? They provide their requirements. Stakeholders provide the requirements. These requirements become part of the requirement document. These requirements become part of the requirement document. Now this requirement document is reviewed with stakeholders. It is reviewed with stakeholders. They could be review 1, they could be review 2, they could be review 3. Then these requirements are presented to all the stakeholders in the form of a structured walkthrough. Now, when the structured walkthrough takes place, what happens? This requirement document gets signed off. There you go. The requirement document has been signed off. Now, this requirement document gets archived. Project goes into executing. This requirement document, we start implementing it, implementing these requirements into the solution. This is the life cycle. Now, when you are implementing the requirement, suddenly one of the stakeholders woke up and they said, oh, I have a change. So this requirement document needs to be updated now. During the course of the project, needs to be updated. And to update this requirement document, you may refer to scope management plan to understand how changes to this requirement document will take place. So both of them are very integrated. Both the ideas are integrated. Gurjo, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Right. So I personally do not see them as two, but PMI says two. But what is there? So you need to understand scope, how scope will be managed, planned, executed, managed, and delivered. Requirement management, how requirements will be managed throughout their life cycle from the day stakeholders spit it out. Don't just let them be in disparate form. Integrate them together into a requirement document. Then don't just leave them in the requirement. Ensure that they are signed off by these stakeholders. It gets archived and it's available to the stakeholders. And if any change to requirement document is required after it is signed off, make sure that look at the scope management plan and see how changes should be made, right? So that's your requirement management plan. Now, going back to this slide right here, the idea of defining scope, topic number B. So what is the idea behind this? So topic B, let's go back to our topic B. So the idea is, number one, create your, develop the scope management plan. That's the first idea, plus the requirement management plan. Now the second step is, now get into this, define scope is the topic, define and manage scope is the topic. First step to define and manage scope, develop the scope management plan and requirement management plan. Second step is collect the requirements of the stakeholders. Collect the requirements of the stakeholders to create the requirement document. Now, to create the requirement document, you should collect the requirements of our stakeholders. Now, look at this like this. When you go and meet 50 stakeholders on a traditional project, what happens? They'll give you maybe 170 requirements, and your requirement document now contains 170 requirements. But your sponsor has only given you $1 million, 6 months, and 4 resources to perform the work. 170 requirements in $1 million may not be possible. And even if it is possible in $1 million, it could not be delivered sometimes in 6 months. Or even if it is possible in $1 million in 6 months, but you are being given only 4 resources to leverage. So there are so many constraints and limitations. So just collecting requirement does not mean, or creating a requirement, just creating a requirement document by no means establishes the fact that all these requirements, 170 requirements, will be delivered as part of the project. And hence starts the third step. The third step is, let us now define the scope. What does that mean? It means, guys, project manager is telling the team, guys, look, you did a great job at collecting these requirements, but make no mistake, these requirements cannot be delivered. But look at the constraints that I have been given. 1 month, 1 million, 6 months, and 4 resources. I can't deliver, we can't deliver. So let us define the scope. What does that mean? Guys, let us bring our stakeholders into the room and look at this requirement document and let us prioritize. Define scope means prioritization. Let us prioritize and let us understand what are the critical requirements and what are the non-critical requirements. So out of these 170, after this prioritization process right here, you may now be able to divide this requirement document into critical and non-critical, or in other words, inclusions and exclusions. What does that mean? It means this now has become the project scope statement. And these requirements out of 170, maybe the team and the stakeholder decided 95 in scope and rest of the 75 out of scope because they do not fit the constraint profile of the project. I've been saying this, that project management is nothing but game of constraints. If you understand this game really well, you will use prioritization to define the scope. So collecting requirements leads to a requirement document. Defining scope leads to a subset. Now, listen to this carefully. Defining scope leads to a subset of requirement document called the project scope statement, which is not all the requirements. So what you're telling the stakeholders, guys, from here on, we all agree that our project scope is 95 requirements, not 170. And we have arrived at these 95 requirements because we have constraints, and together we sat and we prioritized these requirements, and we understood that 95 of them are extremely critical, and we feel as a project team that we can deliver it in next 6 months in $1 million and with 4 resources. That is the idea of project management and defining the scope. There are 3 major steps. Develop the scope management plan and the requirement plan. Collect the requirements. Collecting requirement by no means is a guarantee that each and every stakeholder's requirement will be delivered. It is no guarantee. Only when we define the scope. And what does define mean? Defining means now break these requirement documents into inclusions and exclusions. And how do you do that? The project team is not authorized to do it. You bring the stakeholders, you work with the stakeholders, you prioritize the requirements, and you separate the requirements into inclusions and exclusions. Project scope statement is the output of define scope. Define scope, project scope statement. And number 4, now you create the WBS, and this is what is called the scope baseline. The work that will be, WBS means work breakdown structure. You take this project scope statement and you break it down into WBS, and this is what is called the scope baseline. So what is the idea of topic B? What is the primary idea and notion of topic B? The primary idea and notion of topic B defines scope. For me, in my world and in the world of all and everyone who sensibly executes project, this means establish scope baseline. That's what it means to me. Establish. So the goal is this. All defined scope work that we are doing is being done to create the work breakdown structure. Just very quickly, take a look at this. Here. So look at this. Projects. This is where we started our course. Projects deliver requirements, we said. Project. So this guide called PMI Authorized PMP Exam Prep. They don't call it PMBOK guide. This is what they call it now, right? PMI Authorized PMP Exam Prep. What is this guide all about? This guide is about processes or principles to deliver stakeholders' requirement. This is what this guide is all about, guys, right? So make no mistake here that if the guide is all about requirements, delivery of stakeholders' requirements in a project. Projects are all about delivering stakeholders' requirements. Then how important is this process? Define scope topic B. And if there are 10 to 15 questions on the exam, why be surprised when the premise of project management is defining scope? That is the primary foundation, the first foundation. Define scope. What is the primary goal of defining scope? Primary goal of defining scope is to establish the scope baseline. This is the reason why we define scope. How do we establish the scope baseline? By creating WBS. How can we create a WBS? By creating a project scope statement. How are you going to create a project scope statement? By collecting requirements and creating a requirement document. When can you start creating a requirement document? When you created a scope management plan plus a requirement management plan. That's it. There you go. Look, we looked at 3 core areas. There are much more I wanted to discuss, but we get into details, which is, I like getting into details, but this is by no means my, this is the idea. This now I have to stop here, but this is the starting point. Next week, I'm going to wrap scope up completely, or I'm going to wrap planning in the review. If I have time, then I'm going to wrap planning, and then we'll go towards doing the work. And that's where my reviews will stop, because now with that, I would have given you all what I know about this new PMBOK. I will give you the foundation, and that's where a review for my January courses will stop right there, but my reviews for the current course will continue. But what I'll do is I'm going to stop here, but I'm going to open this up for a little bit of questions and answers, and then we can call it a day.
Hi, Hemant. Just a quick question. So this is going to be the last review session for the January, like the people who are
No. So I will have a starting the work review one more time next week, because I would like to go through some of the critical components, and then we'll jump into doing the work, right? And maybe one on the business side. But chapter number 5 is extremely not consequential in your pursuit of PMP certification, because there are 5 to 7 questions from that chapter, or 10 questions from that chapter maybe, right? Out of which probably you already know 8, because we have gone in details, talked about it on day 1 and day 8 of your course. So you're fine from that standpoint, right? So
thank you.
Hemant, I have a question. After the WBS, what comes next? Project scope management?
No, so after WBS, scope baseline. Exactly. WBS is your scope baseline.
Yeah,
right?
no, sorry, before it. So it's the scope baseline, then the WBS, before it?
Project scope statement.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problems.
Hemant, it's Gurjot. Really quickly, you had said earlier that there's 3 sentiments, excuse me, 3 sentiments about what we should know about submitting a change request. And the first sentiment was, if they ask you about the first step, just make sure you're selecting the impact assessment answer. Do you mind repeating what those other 2 sentiments were?
Just 1 second.
Yeah.
Continue working too, right? Work is important too. So, okay. All right. So let's talk about it a little bit. Good question. Change request. Let's talk about it a little bit for 2 minutes. Let's get a new slide here. And change request, you'll be surprised in the exam. Expect 7 questions, right? It seems like the entire exam is change request, and why not? All right, why not? Every project has change request, and PMI likes to test you there. So you are a PM, a stakeholder. So one of the questions is like this: a stakeholder just
Sorry, you're not sharing.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Ralph. So just give me a second here. I'm not sharing because what happened here? Where are we? Here. Okay, this needs to be here. maybe, and I can share from here. Is it working now? No?
Not yet.
Okay, just right here. I think it's a little late. Brain is not working. So here.
Yeah, it's coming up.
So PM. So right here, let's get it off here. So number one, project manager. So guys, when I'm talking about change request, for some of you, for your understanding, the project is already in executing. Project management plan. So project management plan is signed off. Signed off means no more. Scope is locked. Scope baseline is done. Schedule baseline is established, and cost baseline. Stakeholders have signed off on this is the work we want done in this time and this cost. All signed off. Now the project has gone into executing or doing the work. Now stakeholders cannot just come and say, hey, I have one more requirement. It's not going to happen like that. It has to go through organizational change request process. So project manager is in executing. The project is in executing, and the project manager is managing the project in executing. Stakeholder just provided a new requirement. A stakeholder just provided a new requirement. So Gurjot, how about you answer this question? A stakeholder just provided a new requirement. What should you do as a PM and the team? What should you do? This is the first exam question. What should you do? Stakeholder just provided a requirement. What should you do?
I should complete an impact assessment.
Wrong. There you go. You just got it wrong.
Okay.
So what was the sentiment number one of starting the project? It was, so for everyone, Pavanjit, you can also answer it. And anyone who, what was the sentiment one of starting the work? Anyone can answer this.
Selecting a methodology.
But before methodology, understand what? What do you
Business
understand?
need.
Business
Define scope.
So wait. So absolutely, Ralph and others, business need. So why did we want to understand the business need for these situations? That when a stakeholder gives a requirement, I will not just go and tell my team, guys, go spend your 10 hours doing an impact assessment. If the need is not about mobile application, it's about a department store, should I still be looking at this requirement? If this is not your product? No. So if a stakeholder provides a requirement, what should you do the first thing? In your head, you're like, what is my business need? Does this requirement address the business need? Yes, no. If no, let me ask my stakeholders. Perhaps they know something that I'm not aware of. Let me ask them first. Hey, how does it map to the business need? If you feel that it does not map to the business need, don't you think you should encourage a discussion here? Right? Yes. So there you go. This is the answer is ensure that it maps to the business need. This is where basics come into play. So this is your scenario number one in the exam, right? Now comes the second scenario. It maps to the business need. Everything is good, right? The same scenario maps to the business need conveyed in the question, or is not one of the four options. Now you say the stakeholder has provided a new requirement in executing. Stakeholder provided a new requirement. What should you do now? Answer is the possible answer. Let's say B. You looked at the option. It said perform impact assessment. Perform impact assessment of a new requirement. Stakeholder has given a new requirement. You should perform impact assessment to understand how much more work will be added to the plan because of this, how much more work, how much more time, and how much more did it cost. So initially project plan got signed off. It said $1.2 million, 3 months, and $1.2 million in 3 months, 17 requirements. Project went into executing with these 17 requirements, $1.2 million in 3 months. In executing, one stakeholder raised hand and said, I have one more requirement. So what did the project manager, and it maps to the business need. What did the project manager do? Told the team or himself or herself, conducted impact assessment to understand this new requirement cannot be delivered in $1.2 million. So how much more work is this? How much more time will be required? Cannot be done in 3 months. So it will require 15 more days. And how much more dollars? It will require $200,000 more. So this impact assessment gets created. So the answer is perform impact assessment. Now, this is scenario number 2 or sentiment number 2. Sentiment number 3 on the exam is you are a project manager. Just like before, stakeholder has provided a new requirement. You have done the impact. Now, question is saying you've done the impact assessment. What should you do? You got 2 options. You have 3 options, B and C. A option is submit the change request. Submit the change request to the change control board. Next option is talk to the sponsor. Talk to the sponsor and tell them about this. Talk to the sponsor and tell them about this new requirement and this impact assessment. You know, this is the right choice. So look, you are the sponsor. Sponsor owns the scope. They are paying for the scope. So even before you waste organizations $1 in filling up the change request form after the impact assessment, you should actually go to the sponsor and say, stakeholder number Y has provided a new requirement, and that new requirement is going to cost us $200,000, 15 more days. Are you okay with this? The sponsor will say, you know what, tell the sponsor, not right now. Or the sponsor will say, I am okay with this. Go ahead, fill up the change request form and submit it to change control board. So then it goes into change control board, right? So this is one sentiment. Now, these are 3 powerful sentiments which give you about 5 to 6 questions on the exam that revolve around these concepts. But then there are 2 other sentiments in the exam, which is change control board has sentiment is the question starts like that in the exam. And I'm going to send you these questions. I've got about 70 such questions ready. Change control board has approved a change request. They've already approved a change request. Logically, what happens is people select option number A. They will say, update the project management plan now with the new baseline. But that's the wrong answer. So change control board has approved a change request. There is another line that is added to this question, and it says, but the team is not with you. But the team does not support it. Your team does not support it, but the team does not support it. If the team does not support it, you cannot move forward just like that. So the option C is probably the right option, or option B, which says that engage the sponsor and invite the sponsor or the sponsor representative to come in a meeting and talk to the team about the benefits of this new change so that the team gets aligned with this work. Because remember, every change request is additional work that will take place. Additional work that will take place, and the work will be performed by the team. So that is another sentiment. So whenever it says change control board has approved a change request, but the team is not with you, you're looking for options where you can create alignment of team with the management. Do something to create alignment of the team with the management without not running and saying change control board has approved it. Who cares about my team? It is your team. They are performing the work of your project. They're very important for you, right? So those are some of the sentiments that you need to know, and 5 to 7 questions on the exam are based on change request, and don't be surprised if there are 10 questions on the exam.
Okay, this is perfect summary. Just last question about this is that all these sentiments apply equally regardless of the methodology, correct? It's applicable in Waterfall and it's applicable in
No. This is all now this process-based questions are basically traditional, right?
Okay.
In Waterfall and Sprint, there is no change. And that's again a very good question, but I can't resolve it now because it's almost 9:17.
Yeah,
I'll give an opportunity to others to ask a question, but I'll keep the forum up till 9:30 today. It's delayed. I had to go in a meeting, but now that I'm here, I missed it now already, but that's fine. So for some of you, who will be interested, I'll talk about the agile philosophy of change a little bit later. It will be important for you guys in the sprint to understand that a little bit. It's a very good question, but I want others to ask me some questions, please.
Hemant, so
Yeah.
the sentiment where you talk to the sponsor, is it the communication? Or what is this sentiment? The act of talking. I'm not part of the sprint, so maybe I'm just jumping.
No. So yeah, you're moving ahead a little bit. After second class, it will be a better understanding for you when I put the process flow in front of you about the change request, right? Because it's coming.
Yes,
Session 2 and session 3 is coming. But what you know right now is good place. You are in a good place. It just needs a little bit of topping up.
Thank you, Hemant.
Yeah. Okay. More questions? No?
Yeah, Hemant. So you mentioned like the requirements management plan is a part of scope management plan, right? In terms of the deliverable, we come across BRD, business requirements document. Yeah. Is it also related to the requirements management plan, or is it or deliverable?
Now, BRD, we call it BRD, but PMI does not call it BRD. BRD is more like an IT term now, right? It's called the requirement document. So, and it is an outcome of collect requirement process. You start collecting the requirements. Where do you put these requirements? You put them in the requirement document. Some organizations may call it the business requirement document. Some organizations may like to call it the feature and functions. Some organizations who are using agile mindset will not use the term requirement document. They will call it a product backlog, right? That is why every topic and every step of this guide requires us to think about that topic, just like how Gurjot right now said, well, this topic, how would I handle change on Agile? Is the same? No, it's not the same. Agile mindset, a different philosophy. Traditional, a different philosophy. Similarly, a requirement document is also is part of, requirement management plan will say, create a requirement document, but just don't create a requirement document. Manage it, maintain it, and manage changes to the requirement document. Similarly, product backlog, manage it, maintain it, and manage changes to the product backlog. How we treat it is based on the methodology now.
Hemant, I have one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that you said was that if somebody sends a change request, so do the impact analysis and talk to the sponsor. So should just thinking. So can the project manager talk to the sponsor before doing the impact analysis, or should he talk to the sponsor after doing the impact analysis? Because sponsor may be not be agreeing to the change, right? So what's the point of doing impact analysis?
Sponsor. So let's just say you did the impact assessment and you went to the sponsor, and the sponsor said, I don't think right now we have the budget for this. Just tell the stakeholder that not right now. What would you do as a project manager? You will not go, no, I don't agree with you. You'll say, well, okay, that's fine. What I'll do is I'll communicate with my stakeholder and let them know not right now. We're putting it for next phase, right? You stop right there. So what did the sponsor do? Sponsor stopped you from doing some additional work. Later on at change control board, they would have said, oh, why did you even fill up the change request form? You should have come to me and asked me. I would have resolved it right there for you, right? Because remember, if you are building your house and in your house, someone who does not have authority said, add a swimming pool. If I'm the contractor, I'll say, come to you, I'll say, well, I've done the impact assessment. This is how much swimming pool will cost. You will say, don't even worry about filling up the change request form. I'm saying no, convey it to the stakeholder, not right now, maybe in the next phase, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Questions? All right. So finally, the agile changes in agile. Because agile has a shorter phase, sometimes called iteration or sometimes called the sprint, depending on the kind of approach you're using in agile. There are no changes that take place during agile iteration. If there is a change that needs to happen, it gets added to the requirement document of agile, which is called product backlog. And when we finish this current run of 2 to 3 weeks, we'll come back, pre-prioritize and put it in the scope immediately. But during the sprint, there is no change. the product owner or the person who is the voice of the customer in Agile, if they feel that this iteration is not going to add any value, they may kill it completely, but they don't allow any changes because it's just 2 to 3 weeks. The world is not going to change in 2 to 3 weeks. So if someone stakeholder wants a new requirement, it gets added to the product backlog. Product owner is responsible for the value delivery or the prioritization within when you finish the iteration. When you come back, you will get it added to the new iteration log based on if it meets the prioritization criteria and if it delivers the value. So that was your answer, Gurjot, for that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, so I wanted to cover a little bit more, but I think it's just too late for everyone, for me too, and for you too. But what we covered is, I think, good content, gives you insight into at least, if not anything, 25 PMP exam questions. If you heard me well, taken some notes, it will strengthen your knowledge from what you have read up till now. For people who are in the next session, it just gives you a lot of momentum moving forward from here, right? So I'll put the recording on our website by next couple of days. It should be there if you want to review this. Next week we will wrap this up completely. We'll wrap up starting the project, and you continue with your sprint the way it's going. But we'll continue with this and doing the work, which I feel are critical to passing the PMP exam. After that, keeping the team on track and keeping the business in mind, I personally consider them to be a repeat of all what we have covered. So we won't kind of like look into that, but yeah, that's what it is. So thank you guys. Thank you very much. Look, 67, 70 people join in. This is what makes it so interesting, that everyone wants knowledge, right? This is a classic example of being here at 9:25, being tired from work, all of us, but we are here together in this pursuit of knowledge. And I think that's what makes our life and everything even more beautiful. Sitting here engaged, asking me questions. I'm trying to answer the questions. And mostly I would answer all the questions, but there will be times when maybe we'll answer it later because we are not there yet to maybe hear me or comprehend it right now. But we are all going to get there. On that note, we'll say goodbye, and I'll see you on Saturday, and some of you I'll see you next week one more time. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you, Hemant.
Good night.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.